chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. And we're going to read this, and then we're going to begin to kind of unpackage this particular passage and then move on to the others. So can I get someone to read Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17?
Soon afterwards, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. A large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, "Don't cry." Then he went up and touched the coffin, and those carrying it stood still. He said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." The young man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. They were all filled with awe and praised God. "The great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." This news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country.
And so question number 1 asks, what are the circumstances that are being described in verses 11 and 12? What is not only the circumstance, but what are some of the implications of the circumstance for, let's say, some of the main people who are being described? Just 11 and 12.
She had this woman had a son who apparently was supporting her and taking care of her. And the shock to her was that he died before she did.
So here is a woman who we learned is a widow, which means that she would have had let's say a husband. Let's put the husband up here. Who in this society would have been responsible for his wife and then his offspring. And then I guess the son would run off and marry or whatever. But the woman, before she became a widow, the woman/wife was still there. But once the husband is no longer on the scene, then all we have is the son. What role in biblical times would a son have played in his mother's life if the husband was no longer there?
He'd be the head of the household, wouldn't
he? He would be the head of the head of the household.
And the provider.
He would be the provider. So it's not just I'm the one with the authority. I'm the one who is bringing in the means so that we may all eat. Can we just make it that basic?
Yep, sure can.
And so it's not like, I think it's important that we make sure we understand what life was like back then. So it's not like she could have just gone to the job ads and said, okay, well, my son has died, let me go find a job. She may not have even been in the prime of her life anymore, such that she would have the physical strength to go and get a job. And so when we think about, and no mention is made of grandchildren.
If we go back to the book of Ruth, there's an example there in the book of Ruth of what happened to a widow. Now, Naomi had Ruth and the whatever the other daughter-in-law was named to go glean for her. Otherwise, she would have had to go do it. That's hard, back-breaking labor because you're bent over trying to pick up the wheat that's fallen on the ground. So it's not like you can go through the field and pick the stuff that's standing up at head level. You go down and you pick up the stuff that's on the ground. It's hard work. This woman is facing that.
And we're not talking about facing it so that she can maintain some luxurious lifestyle. We're talking about facing that so that she might even be able to eat every day. Okay? It may be hard to think of it then, but we can go to places in our own world in 2019 look at the plight of women in 2019 who lose the male who would be responsible for them. And I'm just going to pick Afghanistan as an example. And many countries, to be honest with you, I know that Islam would say some things about how things should be, but the way things should be and the way they actually end up being can be two very different things. And so in many societies, widows become outcasts. In many societies, women get shut out of the economic system so that they are unable to earn and become beggars on the street. That's not back in the gospel. That's in 2019 today. Strangely enough, as I was doing a little research, my mind came back to me, something I learned when I was in school. A friend of mine from India said that they had a practice, they don't do it anymore, except I did see an incident of this in 2011, of when a husband would die on the funeral pyre, they would hoist the widow onto the pyre so that she could go and be with the husband. This is real. And so, Usha, who I'm now, here's my friend, she said that the reason that was given was because the wife's love was so great for the husband, she wouldn't have been able to survive without him. So we just, she would want to get onto that fire to be with the husband. But then Usha, again, this is my friend, would say that so many incidents of widows resisting getting onto that fire, like you're not jumping in yourself like, oh, I'm going to miss Daddy. Nope. Like, But because of the economic implication of bringing the widow into the home, now I got to take care of you. Because of the superstitions and the bias around, let's say, some negative associations between someone being a widow and the negative kind of, I'm going to call it luck. I just don't know what else to call it because it's outside of our own belief system. But the stigma, let's call it stigma, of bringing a widow into the home. It's like this person is seen as bringing some bad things into the home. It's easier to get you on that fire and take care of several problems at a time. In 2019, there are still women who are suffering when they lose a male who would have been taking care of them or had responsibility for them. And so while we're looking at it back in, the gospel, I want us to keep in mind there are lots of opportunities for us to think about this today. And so I want to now take a look at what does the Bible say about the widow? And so can someone pull up Exodus 22, 21 through 24? Can someone else pull up Deuteronomy 27, 19? And can someone pull up Deuteronomy 26, 6 through 15? And let's start with Exodus. What does Exodus 22, 21 through 24 say? Okay, I will read it. It says, "You shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict them in any way, and they cry out at all to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will become hot, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. This is the Lord speaking. Let's move on to Deuteronomy 26, 6 through 15.
But the Egyptians mistreated us and made us suffer, putting us to hard labor. Then they cried out to the Lord and God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our voice and saw our misery, toil, and oppression. I'm sorry, I forgot my glasses.
That's
I can't
okay.
see it from-
Keep going.
So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with great terror and with miraculous signs and wonders. How far am I going?
You're going down to 15.
He brought us to this place and gave us this hand, a hand flowing with milk and honey. And now,
Lamb. Not a man.
oh,
Oh, look at
thank you,
man.
thank you. Oh, this works. Now I bring the first fruits of the soil that you, O Lord, have given me. Place the basket before the Lord your God and bow down before him. And you and the Levites and the aliens among you shall rejoice in all the good things the Lord your God has given you and your household. That's 11. When you have finished setting aside a tenth of all your produce in the third year, the year of the tithe, you shall give it to the Levite, the alien, the fatherless, and the widow. Where am I?
So that they may.
According to all you have commanded. I have turned aside from your commands. I have not turned aside from your commands, nor have forgotten any of them. I have not eaten any of the sacred portion while I was in mourning, nor have I removed any of it while I was unclean, nor have I offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the Lord my God, and I have done everything you have commanded me.
All right, let's hit the pause for one moment, because I want to just go back, excuse me, so we capture verses 12 and 13.
You'll be back. You'll be back.
All right, it says in verses 12 and 13, and when you have finished laying aside all the tithe of your increase in the third year, the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, so that they may eat within your gates and be filled, then you shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the holy tithe from my house, and have also given to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, according to all your commandments which you have commanded me, and I have not transgressed your commandments, nor have I forgotten them. And now, let's move to verse 15. It says, look down from your holy habitation, from heaven, and bless your people Israel, and the land which you have given us, just as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. So what is going on here in those passages? What are we learning about what the children of Israel have been commanded to do, what they are doing, and what they would like to do as a result of following that commandment?
They're keeping the eye on the community and taking care of the ones who need help.
Yes. They're keeping an eye on the others. And the others that are described here are the stranger, the fatherless, I'm just going to say the orphan, the widow, and there's one other. The Levites. I probably should have put the Levites at the top, but that's okay. Let me ask a question. What do these groupings have in common?
They didn't have a big presence in society.
It didn't,
They don't have much support. They don't have any support.
they don't have jobs that pay them.
They don't have the ability to earn on their own. The Levites are commanded to rely on the tithe that is brought in. So you don't go out and work the land that you've been given. You're a special category. The Lord's going to take care of you through the people. The stranger the stranger is someone who is shut out from society in terms of you're not a part, you're on the outside, so you don't have the things that are necessary to get a job or to work here. You are not inside of the society, subject to the rules and the way things work. You are outside of the society. So if we looked at that in 2019, we might say you don't have a social security number, so you can't get a job. Right? So there's something that you need in order to work and be able to earn. And if you don't have these things, you're the stranger. The orphan or the fatherless, it's a child. And you know what? I know you all have seen it. There is nothing more heartbreaking than seeing a child begging. Nothing. And I mean a little one, 8, 7, somebody without parents who is on the street in, some country. We don't necessarily see it here in this country because, a CPS, they'll come and scoop them up. The police or someone will come and scoop them up. But there are many countries where there is not a safety net. And if a child is left without a parent or someone to take care of them, they'll be on the street begging. And I mean from little. We already talked about the widow, and if you don't have a son or someone to take care of you, unless you're ready to get engaged in that back-breaking work, you also don't have a natural place to earn. Or can I say this? At least, there are some exceptions, or have a natural land that you own that you could have other people working. Because it's not just about your own ability to work as a widow, it's about owning property and inheritance rights and being able to even use what you would have, which would be not much or nothing, to earn money. It's bigger than just your work. And the Levite, by the command of God, is not to rely on his own strength, but is to rely on the promise of God to eat. There's a point I want to make here. They begin in this passage by talking about what they suffered. You were afflicted in Egypt. You suffered oppression. And then there is discussion about how one should set aside, one should respond, one should receive the vulnerable group. And then, after you have done that thing, to receive, to take care of, to care for those who are on the fringe of society, what happens in verse 15? Then you cry out and say, Lord, then bless us. I don't want us to miss that. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. That's the greatest commandment. But there's so many places in the Bible where the Lord, even in the old, this is not an equal sign, this is just it's just saying that this relationship between you and others, the Lord is saying, and we've seen it, before you come to me, asking me for anything, how are you doing over here? And I think this one is particularly poignant because these are the vulnerable. So if we said, what do they have in common? Right, they don't have the ability to earn. also don't have any, can I just say, natural protection. And so the Lord places, except for Levites, the Lord places them in a special category. I believe Levites are special too, but in a different way, where the stranger, the orphan, the widow, he's saying you are to not only care for them, but you're going to give them a special layer of caring in the year of tithing. So it's not just a generalized caring, but you're going to do something even more in a particular year. We asked about their circumstances, but how might their potential futures also differ? Let's take the Levites off the table for just a moment. The stranger, the orphan, the widow. Let's think about not just the right now, but what about their futures? How might they be the same? How might they differ in that society at that time?
The orphan hopefully will grow to adulthood and would no longer be, even though you might still be thinking like an orphan, you're an adult and the responsibilities of adulthood, taking a family, a wife, etc.
Okay, absolutely. So the orphan, if he or she survives, will grow up, maybe become someone's wife, or, be able to earn. They will come into their physical strength. They're just vulnerable right now because they're little. What about the stranger?
We'll move on, hopefully.
The stranger could marry into society. The stranger could, give him or herself over to work within society. Okay, so I can't earn here on my own, but if you'll receive me into your home, I will serve this household until the next 20 generations. Whatever it is. Or the stranger could move on. So the shut-outedness for the stranger is not necessarily because of a physical weakness. The shut-outedness for the stranger is because they don't have a natural way to come into society to eat. And what about the widow?
She's at the low end of this. She could be or will be in that
She could marry.
situation. That'll be the worst.
Keep this in mind for when we get to the Timothy passage. If she's young enough, she could remarry to her husband's brother, if there's one that exists, something like that.
Or can
Or some other kinsman, if she's young enough. Or what if she's not?
Then it's not. She's in that situation for the rest of her life. Yeah.
Let's look at our last passage, and then we're going to go back to Luke. Can someone read Deuteronomy 27:19?
First is a man who withholds justice from the alien, the fatherless, or the widow. Then all people say, Amen.
Now look at this. There's blessings and cursings. There's life, there's death. But here, among the things that are said, there is a designation for the vulnerable, which is, the word curse doesn't mean like what we think of it now. We know it has a different meaning. Kara, it means constrained. It means something a little bit different than what we might think of a curse today. But you will be constrained from your full blessedness. Let's put it like that. If you pervert justice, in other words, if you take advantage of their vulnerable state, you know they're vulnerable, and you know they should have some justice. But if you pervert that justice to the stranger, to the orphan, or to the widow, you will be constrained in your own blessedness. I want to know from these passages, and just anything else that you might, even the Ruth, passage, what is the Lord teaching us and the children of Israel about who he is, first of all, and what it means to be his special people? I'm going to call his special treasure in the Old Testament his, children in the New Testament. What is he saying, the Lord, in terms of his instruction about the vulnerable in our society, or any society? I love that. Now, she said they are important too.
There is no one outside the attention of God.
They are important. I have my eye on them. How about he said, I hear their cry. Because if you treat them poorly and they cry out, and if you're treating somebody poorly, they're going to cry out. The Lord's going to hear it, even in their heart. What else is the Lord saying? He's telling us things about how he sees them, but what else is he saying? They're important. He is taking care of them. What else is the Lord saying? You are not allowed to mistreat them. It's even more so than just the positives. The Lord is saying, you're not allowed to mistreat this group. The stranger, the fatherless, the widow. You cannot withhold justice. And even more, if you go back to the first Deuteronomy passage, he is saying, I love you too, but please don't come to me if you're doing bad here. Unless you're trying to ask me to help you. Fix your heart. Even in, we know this, the Old Testament, this idea of loving one's neighbor, or an articulation of that, is made. If you don't know what to do, well, here's what you do. You tithe, you give the money so that the poor, the vulnerable, and then in the third year, you don't know what it means to love, you save up everything for that third year, and then you do it there. So the Lord has kind of like, codified what this love could have looked like in Old Testament. Even the stranger who has no natural protection, he is saying, as my special people, you provide that protection. Let's go back to the Luke passage. Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. And in question number 4, what I ask is, how does Jesus respond to these circumstances in verse 13?
He had compassion.
It says when Jesus saw her, he had compassion. This word compassion, or was moved with compassion, it means to be moved with deep compassion or pity. And it's not like from a place in your head where you analyze the situation and you can see that they are in a bad state. This word, move with compassion, it's like coming from the very depths of who you are.
I like the way my old NIV puts it.
Yes.
When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her.
Yes. His heart, the deepest parts of who you are. When he saw what? What did Jesus see? We just described what her circumstance was. So what did Jesus see?
Mother carrying her, crying as she's carrying her son to her.
He saw, absolutely. So he saw just some death and some grief. What else did he see?
He saw her heart.
He saw the true future brokenness of her situation. Not just where she is in the moment that we are walking this funeral through, but he also saw, and now, he would know, it's your only son, you're about to be in a very, very difficult circumstance. What else did Jesus see?
Well, I was just going to say, they told her, do not weep.
Yes.
And how wonderful. I'm assuming that the way he said it, she said, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, if I said it, yeah, get out of here.
No.
We don't know what you're talking about.
But actually, you know what? what looked like could have been despair, what looked like could have been a hopeless situation or hopelessness. Jesus came in and brought life. Okay, now, gotta ask the question. Yes, Jesus raised the son from the dead, and that brought life. But does that mean that we can't learn anything about our own circumstances and how we react to situations? Is there any parallel between how Jesus responded, which results in life, and how we might respond when we see someone in a similar, not necessarily I'm a widow, but I'm in a situation that has the potential to result in despair and hopelessness. How can we be like Jesus now? That's the theme for the upcoming women's camp. How can we be like Jesus in 2016 and parallel what he did for this widow back in the Gospels? Can you? Maybe I should ask the question again. Maybe not be presumptuous.
We can support emotionally, financially, if necessary.
Yeah. You know what? Absolutely. If you can just go spiritually just for a moment. I love what Mary said, because when I said, what is the Lord trying to teach us, she said that they're important. And I don't know if you all have ever been in a situation, either you or someone else who is suffering some great calamity or trauma. And to be reminded, even in that sadness, that you and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing is important to the Lord. And you are important to the Lord. Now, it may not feel good right now, but just to be reminded that he is there and he loves you, even in this terrible trauma. Do you know how that can breathe life back into a situation that may seem so desperate and full of despair? That's what we bring. We bring the word of life. So yes, Jesus brought physical life. But we have the words of life. We have the word of God. And so just like the widow or others in a vulnerable situation, now we if you can, why that be amazing, the Lord will use you to do that. We may not be able to raise the dead. Try to make the whole church clear up to do that. But we can certainly bring the word of life. Sometimes knowingly, how about sometimes unknowingly? Okay, so I'm going to build on something that Major Linda has shared many times. When she was in the hospital with her leg situation. How she said people would come into the room and they would just say something. She might have been feeling a little down that day, but they would speak a word of encouragement to her, and it brought some vitality, some life. We've all been in that circumstance, haven't we? The Lord saw and was moved with compassion. And as a result of being moved with compassion, he brought life. Physical life, obviously. But because he is the Word, it just brings a comprehensive life back into a situation. The Lord may not use us to bring that physical life, but I don't want us to forget or to ignore that when we see a circumstance where someone is now vulnerable, like the widow, like the stranger, like the orphan. The Lord has charged us to bring those words of comfort and to bring those words of life so that they will know more than anything else that they are important to Him. So that they will know more than anything else that He is aware and thinking about their circumstances. Okay, I kind of talked about number 5, but it says, what can or should we learn from this circumstance about our own behavior? How about our own thoughts and behavior about those who are vulnerable, marginalized, or at risk in society? Vulnerable, marginalized, or at risk. Can I just say something? It may not be that we have to think about our behavior. We may have to think about the drip torture that we get from this sewer about how we should view people who are marginalized, vulnerable, or at risk in our society. Because there is this constant drip torture in our society that says, maybe not so much in the Salvation Army, but says if you're poor, it's because you're lazy. Or if you're in a bad circumstance, it's your fault. Or, you know, you don't have any strength, too bad for you. Or, okay, I'm just going to pray and hope everything works out. So it's not just behavior. What's going on in our hearts? And are our hearts, do we have any, we do, ability to feel the compassion? You know, there's nothing wrong with compassion. I just want to challenge this idea that if we feel compassion, you know, and then act on it, that we're not, it's not weakness. And it's not holding others accountable. It's God and Christ-like to see a circumstance that puts someone in potential despair or hopelessness and feel the compassion of God. And then respond if you can or how you can. Maybe sometimes it's just all I can do is pray. But sometimes I can pray, I want to jump down to 1 John, and then we're going to come back. And the 1 John that I have here, John chapter 3, verse 17. It says, but whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him?
My mom was a good teacher. She saw people that were in need and she helped them. And she was a hard worker. Things didn't come easy for her.
Right. So I have to work hard for the little I have, but I'm willing to share a half a pea that I had to work 20 hours to give to you. But note it says, who shuts up his heart. So in other words, you may actually be feeling that compassion, but you're like, no, I'm not doing that. Because the unrenewed mind somehow now says, oh, but it's your fault. Or, oh, but you are not doing what you're supposed to do. Or get your own boots or whatever those things are. So we shut up the compassion. You may actually feel it. But then you say, let's press it down. If you have and you see and shut up that compassion, it says, it's just asking. I'm not asking. The Bible says about the love of God. Now let me just say this, because you know I have learned over the years. I used to have this thing where I would see somebody who was hurting. I literally would feel this overwhelming sensation like, I have to do something. I have to help. I have to. And I can remember sitting in a church many years ago, and a woman was crying, and somebody was comforting her, and everything in me was like, Cynthia, go do something to make this better. And I don't even know this person. But I'm feeling that. And the Lord said to me, no, you wait. Let me lead you. So just because you feel the compassion, and even though the Bible has said it, you still have to allow the Spirit of the Lord to lead you on what to do and how to do. And so I don't want you to take what I'm saying and pointing to without keeping that in mind as well. Yeah.
That is such a good thing to bring up, because sometimes God has put people in that situation, so they decide that they're going to rely on Him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, what we want to make sure that there's no hardness there, that we,
Exactly.
right,
Yep.
but that we are listening to the Spirit of the Lord, so that if He says to give, or if He says to do, we do. So, for example, a very practical example in my own life. You know, if we're driving down the street and somebody has a sign that says, you know, starving or whatever, if the Lord says give them some money or go buy them something, I do it. If the Lord doesn't say it, I don't do it. Now, you know, hopefully I won't be going to hell over that. But I'm just saying, I always say, Lord, you tell me how to respond in this circumstance, and that's how I respond. Now, others may have a different way of doing it. All right, let's go back. I want to go to 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. You know what's so interesting? I'm just going to pull from the news for a moment. I saw in the news just 2 days ago that there was some woman who was spanking some child that was not her own. And she's going to end up probably, you know, getting in some trouble. I don't know how much trouble. But some little boy was, I think he squirted her with a water hose, and it made her mad, and she went and spanked him. Now, you know, 100 years ago,
That would have been a whole.
that would have been normal. Okay? 100 years ago, but we're not living 100 years ago anymore. Okay? But the way that people responded, they saw this child being spanked, and they used their technology to record it. Now that may seem like a very simple way to respond, but you see that, you know, I would, why don't you run over there and help the child? But that's not what we did. That's okay. In this case, it might have been more important that they pulled out the camera and recorded what was going on, because now with the evidence, the police said we're able to act because we can see what happened with our own two eyes because somebody recorded it. So again, you see this child being spanked by someone who clearly, or maybe not, you know, adoption or whatever, may or may not be his guardian, and they recorded it, and now the police have the wherewithal. No. But see, even that's you know, you see this. Because I know I don't know, I know me, if I saw a child being assaulted by someone who didn't look like their parent, and maybe even if it was their parent, I probably would step into the situation because it's hard to see a child being injured. But I've never injured my own. Okay, so. Right, I wanted to, right. So let's move on to 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. The lesson today is about really compassion and responding to the needs of those who are vulnerable. But I think the other thing the Lord is calling us to think about today is how our treatment and thoughts about others, how they are related to how we want to interact with the Lord. We cannot separate the others and just say, it's just you and me, Lord. Never mind them. The Lord is saying, it's particularly within the church, it's always all of us. Another scripture that we just recently looked at, it says when one part of the body is hurting, the whole body. And so we can't say it's just them. If they're in, especially if they're in the body, when they hurt, we hurt. And if we don't hurt when they hurt, then we have to ask ourselves the question, how does the love of God abide within us if we can look at someone who's in the body and feel nothing? Can someone please read 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 through 8?
Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him in younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn, first of all, to put their religion into practice by caring for their own families, and so repaying their parents and grandparents. For this is pleasing to God. The widow who is really in need and left all alone puts her hope in God and continues night and day to pray and to ask God for help. But the widow who lives for pleasure is dead even while she lives. Give the people these instructions so that no one may be open to blame. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Ouch. Right? That's what we might say is a hard word. He's saying if you don't respond as you should, you're worse than an unbeliever. What guidance is given in verses 1 and 2? And why might it be necessary to provide this guidance? Let's look in verses 1 and 2 again. It says, do not rebuke an older man. It could mean an elder in the church, or it could mean an older person. But exhort him as a father. Younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with all purity. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does anybody have any good commentary on that? Verses 1 and 2. It says, do not rebuke an older man, but exhort him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity.
Well, he might, as an older person, he might have physical abilities and not able to care for himself, not able to work. So treat them as your father.
I have two words I just placed up here. One is dignity, the other is respect. I want to put another one. This is a Cynthia-ism. I don't know if other people use this. The last one is adult status. Yes.
There's a group that's missing from this, and I'm part of it. It's the single adults that have never been married, who may or may not have living relatives. I'm lucky I've got a brother and a nephew that I still have, and I have some husbands and stuff. But I realized that when the scriptures were written, a single adult female was rare. They are not rare today, and they need to be included.
And I would say, and I even told this to Addington, I think there are broader principles here that we need to capture, and sometimes some of the specificity can make this passage challenging, especially as we continue on through some of the other verses. But one of the broader principles are those who lack natural protection and those who might be vulnerable, who are not connected in the ways that our society sees that connectedness and responds to it typically. So that would include people who are single. But right here, I just kind of want to deal with older folks, of which I am rapidly becoming one, according to AARP. It says, do not rebuke an older man, but treat him, but as a father. What does that harken our minds back to when it comes to our parents? Any verse in the scripture that you immediately think about when it comes to mothers and fathers? Honor your mother and your father. Honor your mother and your father. So in other words, when I see Lester here, I don't know how old you are.
Oh. Can't count that high.
But when I see Lester here, I should treat Lester with the same dignity and respect that I would treat my own father. That's what that is saying to me. I don't say, oh, I know he's not my father, so I'm just going to treat him any kind of way. It is bringing us back to this idea that even if we we are not genetically so-called related. Because we're one genome in Christ. You know, we're one ethnos, right? We were all sisters, literally, spiritually. But we are not to change the dignity and the respect with which we treat people who are older. Now, why has this become particularly important when people are older? And not just because they might have a physical limitation, but what about our society today? And I really have to say in the U.S., because if you go to other countries, older people are treated with a lot more dignity and respect than we treat people in the U.S. In the U.S., we love youth. We do. Go to the facial creams aisle. We love young, right? That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with young, but you can't lift young up so high that the moment somebody no longer has their physical strength, they become invisible or unimportant. Invisible or unimportant in the society. You know, and even in churches, yes, sometimes older people become invisible. That's wrong. Yes.
My whole thought with this whole thing is that the younger people are the ones who need to hear this particular lesson because, you know, I don't have a whole lot to do with a lot of the kids these days, but I do try to say hello, and you're lucky to get a return, you know. I mean, they don't give you the time of day. They don't, none of them make any effort whatsoever to engage.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with the parents. Had I done anything like that when I was young, I would have paid for it. Yeah, I didn't treat somebody with
Right,
respect.
but even with, like I said, within this church,
Oh.
there's so many that just don't
Oh,
bother
I know
to
that.
engage at all.
You have to see it at the funeral home. Holy stones, they run around like they're stupid.
But you know what I think is so very important? And I was saying to Addington that maybe we should do this, is maybe we as a family, one ethnos, young and old, maybe as a family, we need to come together and talk about how when one part of the body hurts, like if you don't say hi to me, or after I've said hi to you, I might be hurt. So that they'll understand that our manner of communicating, us who are AARP certified, which is me too, our manner of communicating is different than maybe what you've grown up with now. So I say that to say the following. My niece, I can still remember my sister telling me that her friend, my niece and her friend were sitting in the back seat texting each other.
Yep.
And it just blew her mind. Like, you're sitting in the back seat. I have the music on. I'm not listening to your conversation. And when she asked Kelsey, what are you talking about? It was nothing. But yet they felt more comfortable because of their own kind of whatever, that's how they communicate. But you know what? I agree with what Mary said. If, as a body, we're still a body of Christ. We are still one own, one grouping. And when there's breakdown in communication, whatever that is, I really believe a facilitated conversation, you know, would help people to understand that you might not see anything of it because you were going to text me hi when you got in the car. But as a body, we have to understand and feel compassion for each other.
The thing that I see is, with age is, especially with communication between adults, is, you know, as an older person, you have a tendency to go back over the years. The worst case is where the younger person says, well, whatever you say doesn't apply today, therefore I'm not going to listen to you.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, well, I've lived all these years. You might be doing something that we've done 20 times over and you know it doesn't work, and yet you're saying...
Right. And so, again, you know, I think that's also a very important point because when we go back to the Bible, we're targeting thousands of years ago and bringing that wisdom forward. And as the body of Christ, our wisdom is based on that book. And so you can't say it doesn't apply because it's based on that book. So I'm going to ask the elders with some the word is zish, but I'm gonna try and find a non-slang way to say that, with some respect and authority in the church, then maybe we should think about bringing the community together around something other than just a meal, but a conversation.